Just come across an article posted by the Daily Mirror, which I think demonstrates how the diversity debate can really be skewed by emotions over facts. So the article is about Kylie Jenner and her beauty brand. Now, just a disclaimer at the start of this: I don't have any strong feelings on Kylie Jenner. I don't know her that well as a public figure. I don't follow her. I neither like or dislike her. I've no strong feelings about her, so just to put that out there as a disclaimer. I'm not coming from the perspective of a fan or something like that. Um, but basically, this is the headlines from the Daily Mirror. It's the headline says my computer's being a little bit slow at the moment. Kylie Jenner sparks outcry over employing just 13% black people at Kylie Cosmetics. Right. Okay, so this is what the article says. Kylie Jenner faced backlash after it emerged only 13% of Kylie Cosmetics employees are black. The Lip Kit Queen 22 faced the wrath of her followers in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. Kylie was among the many makeup brand owners taking part in the Pull Up for Change, a movement kickstarted by CEO and founder of UOMA Beauty, Sharon Shooter. But the makeup mogul soon had her back up against the wall when she told other brand owners the number of black employees at her company. Kylie Cosmetics disclosed its employee diversity percentages on Instagram as the company revealed 47% of its employees are BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Um, so the figure is, I'll just read a bit more. Kylie's company went on to say 53% are white and 100% of employees are female. Kylie and their mum, Kris Jenner, were noted as the sole leaders of the makeup empire, but the lack of diversity struck a chord among many of her loyal legion of 180 million fan base. I assume that's on Twitter or Instagram. They rushed to the comment section to ask the mogul about why she hasn't hired more people of color. Hold up, hold up. So 47% of her employees are minorities. 13% are black. So I decided to check this out. I thought, okay, well, that's a controversy. Let me actually find out what is the percentage of Black Americans. I had some ideas that I would guess in my mind, but I wanted to just find out what the actual figure is. So I typed in African Americans, Black Americans. In the year 2018, just 2 years ago, they made up 12.7% of the United States population. This is from the US Census Bureau, which I imagine would be a fairly accurate source. 12.7%. That's about 39 million people. And there's obviously areas where there's a higher concentration of African American people than other areas. So, for example, the state of Montana is going to have a very, very small number of black people compared to, say, Louisiana. Um, but that's the figure, 12.7%. Her company employs 13%. So this is a good example of where this Fox outrage, this people think of emotions over facts. So on the surface, it looks like a small percentage, but when you actually consider what the wider population is, it actually corresponds to representing the population. So let's say, for example, the black population of the United States was 30% and her company only employed 13%, then you could say, okay, well, it's not really representative of that. But if anything, it's slightly more representative. I think it's a similar issue in Hollywood. I think that when we see this debate about the so-called lack of diversity in Hollywood, that needs to be measured up against how many minority actors are there, what's the percentage of those who are nominated, those who win, and so on, and who get leading roles in films. So much of the diversity debate, it seemed to me to be guided by emotions, not facts. This is just another reminder. Um, so now she's going to have to make an apology, and no doubt they'll demand that she needs 50% black people. This is why these quotas regarding diversity are misguided because they don't always correspond to reality. And you can look at this in politics as well. When we hear, for example, Parliament needs to represent the people, absolutely it should. Diversity is essential in diverse societies. But if it's going to be actually representative, that needs to correspond roughly to the population. So, for example, pushing toward 50-50 men and women would be a fair initiative because that's the population. But Black Britons, for example, I don't know what the percentage is in this country, haven't checked out the figure for that, but I imagine it's something similar. There's large concentrations of Black Britons in bigger cities like Birmingham and London. Um, but what is ridiculous about this sort of outrage is people don't actually stop to consider, well, actually, what is the wider population? So on the surface, they think 13%, only 13%. But they don't think, well, actually, what is the African American population? So in that sense, our company is not underrepresenting black people. And then there's another issue. People who maybe don't get jobs in her company and they're people of color, is that because they're people of color or because they simply don't have the experience? Because you could be absolutely sure these sort of debates are going to be coming thick and fast at this particular time with the Black Lives Matter movement very much being in the public sphere. Um, I think diversity is important, um, but it has to be realistic. And if it's about representing the wider public, then let it represent the wider public, not underrepresent or overrepresent, and not pushing towards quotas that actually don't correspond to what the actual situation is. So I wonder how many of her fans have bothered looking into this. And by the way, that figure, 12.7% in 2018, is from the US Census Bureau. I imagine that's a fairly accurate source. Um, and even allowing for it not being perfect and there might be some mistakes, let's say it's a little bit more. Okay, let's say the true figure is 15% and her company slightly underrepresents the black population. Does that automatically mean that she's failing to hire black people? No. One could argue that, if it's 100% female, how about the male beauty, you know, people who want to be involved in, I don't know. I just think that it's nonsense. And I really wish when it comes to the diversity issue, people would think with the facts and not with their emotions all the time. I think it would go a long way. By the way, while I'm on this, I came across a refreshing video earlier which showed a host of Black American celebrities. Morgan Freeman, Lil Wayne, the rapper Lil Wayne, um, and others speaking out against the narrative. I'm not saying this was recorded specifically for the events right now, this is from different times, but they were basically countering the narrative of Black victimhood. They were basically saying, Lil Wayne basically said he was reluctant to say it, but he said he felt he'd been blessed in life. Morgan Freeman said, racism ends when we stop talking about it. And I knew what he meant because with the media constantly race baiting, it will never go away. And maybe it will never go away anyway, but it's kind of like fueling the fire in a sense. And I think he's absolutely right. Um, Booker T. Washington actually said that there is a faction among black people who want to constantly keep up the black victimhood narrative. Now, I'm a white guy saying this, so I'm already on, hot coals, but um, it was refreshing because there are clearly people thinking outside the box and they're not going for groupthink. And, they're going to be called, I don't even want to use the term, but it begins with you and two words, U and T. I think you know what I mean. Um, I think they're going to be smeared that way because they're not towing the line. Um, I mean, with Black Lives Matter, the whole narrative, basically, the narrative is racist white cops killing black guys. That's the narrative. It does not speak to the whole situation. That's not to downplay what happened to George Floyd, but it really, really doesn't represent the whole situation. It doesn't, for example, represent the fact that most Americans killed by the police this year have been white. Let's just ignore that fact. Um, I just think there's a lot of dishonesty in the current discourse. And I think there are a lot of people, black and white incidentally, who are really, really pushing divisions instead of trying to build bridges. Really unfortunate. I mean, Kylie Jenner could point out that statistic if she had it at hand, but she'd probably be attacked even further. I think it's ridiculous.